watching. This is the first full council meeting since the death of our fellow councillor Charles Sturt, and I wonder first if you would like to just a little mihi, Councillor Maxwell, and then a minute's silence for us to all observe. Yeah.
E to hoa, Charles, haere ki Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa, Hawaii ki pā mama. Ke te pauri a ngā kau I tēnei wā, nō reira. A te atua koe e manaki, kia rono tātou katoa.
And now we'll have our minute's silence. And Councillor Tapsell, we welcome you too to the table. I didn't expect to see you today, and our aroha to you and your family with the loss of your grandfather, who's been wise counsel to you. So a very big loss, and you know that our hearts are with you. And all appropriate, really, commemorations of Charles' contribution were made at a wonderful service for him. And could I just personally thank those in the staff who went out of their way to actually help the whānau with those little bits that made for that day to be very smooth running for our entire community. They know who they were, that all offered their help to help the family. So thank you. And now I'll ask Councillor Donaldson to please open our meeting with prayer.
Your Worship, e ino tātou. E te atua kaharawa ko koe te tohu rangatira, te tohu mataranga. Mana ki tia mai mātou, wau pōnaunga I tēnei wā e mahi nei I a mātou mahi, o te painga o ngā tangata, o te kaunihera o ngā roto o Rotorua. Takua mai kia tau te rangimarie ki runga I a mātou I ngā wā katoa, ko ihu karaiti, hoki tō mātou ariki. Amen. And in English, Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. So we have no apologies this morning, so we can skip that item. Are there any declarations of interest in relation to the agenda? There appear to be none. We move now to urgent items not on the agenda. Is there an urgent item? There are two urgent items, Councillor Bentley and Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mayor Chadwick. I've got actually several urgent items that I'd like to bring up. In that, I think that, first of all, I think that we're due for an update and a refresh for the newer councillors with regard to the leachate court case. I think that's well overdue. My second item that I'd like to also get an update on is the status of PC10 at the moment. Once again, I'm not sure how much the newer councillors know of this issue, but rest assured it is costing us an awful lot of money at the moment. My third item that I wish to bring up is the continued perceived lack of law and order within the CBD, and the complaints and I wish to acknowledge that we're receiving information that says that their situation is not improving, and it is very much a law and order issue which I feel that this council as a group must address with absolute urgency. And my fourth item is with relates to the coronavirus. I'm dismayed to see that even after all the warnings that are going on, we don't even have hand sanitisers in council facilities. One would think that all council buildings and so forth would have, at least at the entranceway, hand sanitisers so people can at least give the semblance of some sort of acknowledgement that there is a risk out there. Thank you.
Yes, in my view, Councillor Bentley, none of those items are urgent. They will be dealt with at the Operations and Monitoring Committee, I'm advised, and that is a future committee that is appropriate for these to be discussed. There are two issues that you raised that are still before the courts, and so sub judice, there will be an update to councillors as we proceed, as we always do on these matters, in confidential when we know anything. The other is coronavirus, and we did have a heads up from Councillor McPherson. He had intended to raise this. At this stage, I believe that the correct agencies, which is not council, are leading the appropriate response for New Zealand, which is the Ministry of Health, about pandemic planning. And I'm very aware that council is central to our local response. If and when we need to be alerted to any incidents that's arising in New Zealand. So we take our advice from the Ministry of Health, and we will respond appropriately then. I don't know if you want to add anything. We are not the lead agency around a community response for pandemic planning. You want to speak to that?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am a DHB board member, and obviously the board has been concerned about coronavirus as well, and I just wondered if it wouldn't be appropriate that we get an update about what is currently happening, because there are some things in train, and it would be good for us to know about that. The hospital is preparing for any eventuality, so that is something that perhaps we could get an update from the DHB. Thank you.
Yes, and this is an issue that as soon as we were made aware of it, the DHB was engaged, and our CEO is part of that responsibility with the DHB. Is there anything you wish to add yet?
I think the points have been well made, that this is an all of government, a whole of government response. It's not a council response. It's actually, council has got some key roles and responsibilities in the middle, but this is a whole of government issue. And as you've been, I think you've been well aware that the government's response has been well publicised through media channels. The priority in the first instance has actually been looking to protect New Zealand from outbreaks of the virus, and there's a number of measures around management of our borders and quarantine and so on that have been put into place to avoid that. The second has been preparedness for an outbreak in New Zealand, and the DHB and the Ministry of Health are leading that, and we certainly have involvement from our role in emergency management and providing support as needed. The other aspect, of course, is concerns that have been raised with respect to economic impacts, and the government has already announced two directions, one around tourism, and Rotorua Economic Development have actually been working and are working with MB with respect to how that package will actually be presented in Rotorua and how the mitigation actions that have been currently planned are able to be implemented. Of course, Red is also working locally with businesses that are potentially affected to understand what the long-term impacts are likely to be. And I think you would have seen last night, I'm sure, the presentation from an economist that noted that in the 1917 flu outbreak, and then again we saw it in SARS, that there was actually a short-term GDP impact, but after a 6-month period there was an economic rebound effect to 30% above the previous GDP level. So I think the point that was made by the economist was that this is not new. We've seen these events happen in the past, and what we need to be cautious about is actually causing undue concern when in fact it may not be needed. But not to minimise the level of potential here, there is a lot of work in behind the scenes with regards to the tourism industry in partnership with government, and there's also government work currently underway in the logging timber industry that is looking at how do we actually potentially redeploy a large workforce. One of the things that's worthwhile noting, however, that Rotorua and the Central Plateau is in a different position from the likes of Gisborne or Canterbury forestry, and that those locations are almost 100% export. Whereas we know that Rotorua has, for example, red stag timber, which means that we've also got a timber processing function, which is quite different from the log export industry. That said, Red is actually working with all of those parties. It's also worth noting that New Zealand has got a very stable banking industry, and that is something that the government sees that is able to actually create a buffer zone for businesses, and that's what Red is actually currently doing, is working with businesses that are potentially affected to see how financial implications or financial impacts are able to be mitigated in that short, medium term until the economy actually moves back into a stable state.
You raised the issue of public safety. We did get the briefing about the patrols. We did have a workshop yesterday where this was discussed. And for us last night, the announcement of the place-based assessment for a housing plan was well received by those who were at Tangatarua, and police were there, as was health, to show that this is an all-of-community response with iwi, council and the government. And the public safety issues that are manifestly obvious to us all are being addressed through that place-based assessment. I don't know if you want to add anything, but I congratulate council staff for actually in 4 months having worked up with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in Kāinga Ora and iwi and council a partnership approach to addressing housing crisis in our place.
Your Worship.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I say I share Councillor Bentley's concern, and I realise we did hear that announcement yesterday, but I did attend a meeting last week, it was, with some shop owners, retailers who are extremely concerned. And actually, I don't care what we say in this chamber, I don't believe enough is being done. And the police need to step up, because we will have something occur in our city, and it really is a safety issue, and we've got to do something. We've got to be prepared to demand accountability from our police officers. They are the ones who are missing in action. And also I think that we have to really look at ourselves as well. This is not going to go away. The place-based assessment that we heard about yesterday, and I'm so pleased about that, but that's not going to happen overnight. And so I mean, we won't be expecting an answer here right now, but certainly I think the police are missing in action on this, and I think it'll get worse before it gets better.
And it isn't really a debate here. We all share those concerns. We are all councillors. We should all be concerned about public safety. And that was part of my speech last night, urging for more community policing. So I think we're getting into debate rather than accepting the issue. We should all accept it. It is an issue shared by all councillors, and there are members of the public here who feel the same. And nobody in our town should feel unsafe in our district when they come into the centre of town. We shouldn't tolerate that. I'm going to close that. And Councillor McPherson, you also had an urgent item.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. The reason for putting coronavirus on the issues to be reported on with urgency and for signalling it some days ago was to give enough time for yourself and the Chief Executive and others to consider both the health and the economic impacts. And I was pleased this morning that we got quite a much more sophisticated analysis of the preparedness of agencies across government, central, and how we would play a part in that with other local agencies like the DHB. And I was pleased that we're now assuming the need for mitigation, not for prevention, because it's quite clear from the reports that are flowing through daily through CNN and so on that it's only a question now of not if but when we have to confront the impact of coronavirus here in Rotorua. And the impact is already being felt, as you said, in the various economic sectors, and anticipating that and preparing our people for that, the management, the mitigation of those crises is all the more urgent in my view because of the question raised during the annual planning of the affordability of rates rises. We can't simply ignore that. And so I'm grateful for the report this morning and look forward to being kept up to date on further plans. Thank you.
Yes, I want to make a comment too that the SARS pandemic plan, I was the Associate Minister of Health when we looked at the crisis of SARS and community responsiveness. I'm very aware from the day we first heard of this virus, we were involved and alerted the Ministry of Rotorua's position and have been very central to the all-of-government response that is required. And there is much more sophistication now than there was in the SARS plan. So yes, as and when required, we'll be giving updates, but you are hearing, we are all hearing it before Council is formally notified, but it's not mitigation, it's our preparedness to respond. We never said that it wouldn't come here. You want to?
Oh, look, the only thing that I would just like to add is that when we had the situation with the Chinese tour group here, within approximately half an hour, we had Rotorua staff on the ground in Rotorua. And the reason that happened so quickly and effectively was that they were operating according to a pre-prepared plan. And in just the same way, the comment that I didn't make is that we have a business continuity plan for council as well, internally in the organisation, and that covers what do we do in a pandemic situation, how do we manage the organisation, how do we keep staff safe, how do we ensure that essential services are retained and so on. So these sort of plans are prepared well in advance, and I think we all hope that we'll actually never use them, but nevertheless they are there and they are activated when these sort of eventualities occur.
So those were the items that were raised and will be dealt with at subsequent committee. We move now. Oh, I do wish to also welcome Stephanie George, sitting Thank you, Stephanie. Kia ora. And Stephanie is one of our young Tuia reps, and it's great that you're on your orientation and coming to see a full council meeting as part of that, Stephanie, and we wish you well. You'll find it a very interesting journey. We wish you well. Now we move to the agenda items, and that's the confirmation of the council minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of December be confirmed as a true and accurate? Moved Councillor Rotorua Tate, seconded Councillor Wang. Are there any corrections? There appear to be none. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Recommendations from other committees, page 17. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report, that the report recommendations from other committees be received? Councillor Tapsell, moved, seconded Councillor Yates. This is easier for the chair to actually see than the previous seating, so I hope you all feel equal field. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. A mover and a seconder now that the following recommendations from the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 13th of February be adopted. I'll take them one at a time. Recommendation 1, the establishment of the Waikawa Hannas Bay Reserve Committee. I need a mover that the Council approves in principle the establishment of the committee to manage the Waikawa Hannas Bay Reserve. Moved, seconded Councillor Rotorua Tate. It now goes for discussion. Is there any discussion or clarification? It came through committee. There appears to be none, so I put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Now a mover and a seconder for recommendation 2. Approval to commence the process to return ownership of land under Tarawera Landing Cafe to Tūhorangi Tribal Authority. I won't read 1, 2 and 3. I'll take them as read. Moved by Councillor Maxwell, seconded by Councillor Yates. Is there any discussion? Well, I think this is remarkably similar mechanism to the Lake Okaro settlement yesterday, and it takes a long time. So these processes we're following exactly as we ought to. And for those of you that got there to the settlement yesterday, can I thank the staff for getting that to conclusion? That was only 14 years. We hope this can go through the office a little bit more quickly than that. I did talk to the Minister about that. So is there any other clarification or discussion?
Not so much clarification, Your Worship. I just want to comment, though, that that really it is quite remarkable that, you know, with Lake Okaro and also with this one, that iwi have been prepared to sit quietly over many years and just wait and let the process take its course. I mean, it really, one really has to take our hats off to them and thank them for their patience over all those years. And of course, many people who were there from the start of the journey, they're no longer here to see the fruition of their works and their hopes and aspirations. So, you know, while we celebrated yesterday and we now have this here to go through, it is quite a sad time, really, when you think of the length of time and people who never lived to see it through. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. There appears to be no more discussion. All those in favour of the recommendation and 1, 2 and 3? Taken as read.
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried unanimously. Staff reports. Recommendation 1, Council representation on other entities, which is page 20. Just a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Moved Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor Donaldson. Before we, all those in favour, please say aye to receive the report. Contrary? Carried. Before we begin this, there is a process too that is relatively open-ended for Te Tato to also look at these entities and to put forward to us any recommendation. We don't have to have somebody on every committee from Te Tato. It's entirely their process, and we'll wait for that. There is also, no, I think we've amended everything there. Do you want to overview it, Una? It's pretty self-explanatory. Are there any questions for clarification? Yes, Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the kind words this morning for my grandfather. The question that I had is particularly around the sewage committee schemes, and that's just from my experience of being a part of that and seeing the value in the work that the Lakes Community Board brought to that, with the appointment of Phil Thomas on there as well to help. I apologise if there have been discussions behind the scenes that I'm not aware of, but that sort of stuck out to me, that he's done a lot of work and really helped communicate with the community there, and has a good relationship with the community there, that they can go to him and ask him questions. So I just wondered if there was a reason why that had been changed, and also, and I apologise to have to bring this up in public, but I had signalled that I didn't have the intention of continuing on these sewage schemes for my appointment. For no other reason than I now have much bigger roles as chairing the O&M committee and leading the housing strategy, and I don't want to stretch my time too far, and I just want to signal that I would be concerned if I had to continue on so many of these sewage committees that I have enjoyed but may not have enough time to continue. So I'll just put that on the table for discussion.
It really doesn't require discussion, so this has been updated to include Councillor Community Board Chair Thomas on the Rotorua and the Sewage Projects Governance Group, and we'll delete, and the steering group for the wastewater treatment plant. And I thank he for raising it with me, and we got that amended. So sorry, it's not on the amended list. There is also a request, but it's not one of these, for some of the funding bodies that Council calls for input from, and especially in the creative sector. And Mrs. Trump has signalled a great passion for this. So they're not listed here, but we certainly invite you to be involved, and so we'll get that as they come up sorted. But these are the bodies that we had to look at. Questions? Yes, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The protocol committees, once upon a time, I recall, had a standard set of terms of reference. Can they be found and given back to us again, just to remind us their function? Thank you.
Gina, would you like to speak to that? They're memorandum of understandings that we have, and they've all been updated, but would you like to speak to that, please, Gina?
Yes, there are a variety of agreements. Some have arisen out of treaty settlement processes, so they were negotiated primarily between iwi and the Crown, and the Council was joined to them. Some predate the settlement process. They're all essentially relationship agreements, and I can provide copies.
And at those meetings, councillors and community board members are welcome to attend. It's lovely if we show an interest. But sitting at the table are those that are designated. Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's just in relation to your comment about the opportunity for Te Tato or Te Aroha to participate in some way on these entities. I mean, when you look at the range of entities, and when you look at what they cover, and of course the ownership interests of many of those of Te Aroha in some of those areas, it would be, I do hope that they will take it up and appoint someone to some of those entities because of the value that they add and they inform the discussion that we have there, and to have that knowledge with us when we're sitting around the table. I mean, yes, of course we have officers who are presenting information to us as well, but to have their insight is actually invaluable. So I hope that we will see them participating. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question and a brief comment, if I may. My question was just around a process for the Kauai Cemetery Trust Board. So our late former colleague, Charles Sturt, was a trustee, and these trustees are appointed through the Maori Land Court. And so I think we're one short on that one. Is there a process underway to appoint a replacement for Charles, is my question.
And that would probably come through that meeting. Yeah. I imagine that that's the right process through the next Kauai Trust meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just my comment was, I think this template of committees just shows the breadth of engagement that our council has with other entities and across our community. It makes for a very interesting, I think, reading for the public, just how engaged we are right across our community and with iwi. So, thank you.
And also there is another concurrent process going on with councillors interested to undertake resource management training to be commissioners. And that's another process that it doesn't have to be listed here. Right. Any further questions? Right. I'm going to put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. The next is the adoption of the Waikato Triennial Agreement.
I don't think you had a mover and a seconder. I thought we did. No, you had a mover and a seconder.
Oh, to receive. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rotorua. Better look this way. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Move now to the adoption of the Waikato Triennial Agreement. I need a mover and a seconder that we receive this report. Councillor Wang. Moved. Seconded, Councillor Donaldson. All those, oh no, we don't have to. That we receive the adoption of the Waikato Triennial Agreement. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, would you like to overview this?
Good morning, councillors. I suppose this is just the second triennial agreement that has come in front of you. You will recall there is the Bay of Plenty regional triennial agreement as well, so it's a similar vein as that, and we have this, as you know, because we do have part of our district within the Waikato region also.
So it's pro forma, really. And it's how far can we extend our energies, really, but it is good if we are a signatory, we're kept in the loop about what that area is up to and where we might be able to have future opportunities to work together. So, are there any other questions? Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'll move part 2 of the recommendation that we endorse a triennial agreement, and just, I guess, make the comment that almost half of our land area is within the Waikato region, and we have quite a number of synergies in terms of our economic interests in forestry and farming and geothermal within that region as well. So it's important that we're engaged with the Waikato Regional Council. So I'm happy to move part 2.
Thank you. You left out fresh water too, Councillor Donaldson. That's another area of interest. You second, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. We move now to the Te Tato o Te Arawa funding contribution. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Yates moved, seconded Councillor Maxwell. that the report Te Tato o Te Arawa funding contribution be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Right. Gina? Carried. Gina, could you overview this report, please?
Tēnā tātou e te tēpu. I'll take the report as largely read, but we'll speak to the main points, much of which you'll be more than familiar with. So we entered into the Te Tatau partnership at the end of 2015. In 2015, Council had already approved an annual contribution of $250,000 per annum, with an additional $40,000 every 3-yearly election. The funding is quite prescribed as to what it can be used for, and that's set out in my report. It can only be used to carry out the 3-yearly elections and to provide administrative reporting, financial governance and other support required for the board to carry out its functions under the partnership agreement. So while Te Tatau have also been able to secure independent funding from other organisations to support, for example, Rotorua, that's primarily been funded directly by application to other organisations. They've also secured some funding for a secondment and other projects that they've worked on. That's all that's all covered in their annual report, which was provided this year and also last year. Each year they hold a fully advertised AGM where they present their annual report and annual accounts to Te Arawa, and then they've also elected to attend to Council and provide a similar presentation to you so that the Council is aware of what activities have been undertaken. In the last triennium, Te Tatau carried out significant work to develop a collective Te Arawa vision. So that document essentially pulls together the strategic plans and the visions of a considerable number of Te Arawa organisations. They also went out and talked to Te Arawa communities. They used social media to really try and pull together a single collective view that represents the diversity of the aspirations of Te Arawa. The reason for that is that when they come to meetings to contribute to council decision making, having a clear statement of the needs and aspirations of Te Arawa ensures that they're able to effectively communicate that back into our decision making. So at the moment we have a particular amount set aside, which is $25,000 per annum, that funds all of their attendance at the meetings as well as all of the work they do within their own organisation. And they have requested an increase in funding to allow them to improve the engagement that they do with Te Arawa. So that's primarily around completing the Te Arawa vision. You'll see in the report that there are essentially 3 options available to you. The first option is to maintain the status quo. That's likely to mean that they will not have sufficient resource to complete the Te Arawa vision, or that will take a very long time to complete, just because of the scale and scope of the work that is being done. However, under that option of the status quo, they would still be able to participate at these meetings, albeit not at the full level that they would like to be able to. The second option, which staff are recommending, is to increase funding, and you'll see the increased funding is $122,500 per annum to support and strengthen their ability to engage effectively with Te Arawa peoples. Primarily that would support the engagement of a project manager to complete the Te Arawa vision, as well as carry out other engagement. The third option is to reduce or to end funding. Technically that is an option available to you. You could unilaterally decide to do that. It would, is certainly not recommended. It would signal an intention to undermine or to step away from our partnership with Te Arawa. In addition, the Local Government Act requires that you provide opportunities for Māori to contribute to council decision making. So if you were to step away from the Te Arawa partnership, you would then be required to develop an alternative mechanism, which I'm suggesting would not be a productive or useful use of council resources to reinvent the wheel. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Wayne?
Not really a question to voice my support. So I also speak on behalf of the Lakes and Rural Community Boards who are voicing their support for this as well. And we all agree that this partnership is absolutely critical for us to move forward, creating an inclusive community, understanding our culture, our home and our people. And I agree, we're not here to maintain the status quo, we're here to move us into the future and make some changes. But I think we all agree that we wouldn't be here where we are today, the events, the projects that we have without the support and collaboration with Te Tātou Aotearoa. So I fully support this and happy to move recommendation 2.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Worship. Just
Do we have a seconder? It has been moved. Seconded, Councillor Rokawate.
It was just a question, Your Worship, regarding we have a couple of, is it 1 or 2, through you, Your Worship, secondments to Te Tātou to assist them because they're already beyond their capacity with their work program. The excellent Jenny Rennie is one, and perhaps you can advise us of others. It just, with this, I guess, would this see a handover of those positions, or what's just some clarity around that?
So there was, and I can't remember the agency that provided funding to Te Tātou, which then came through to Council to enable Jenny's position to be seconded to Te Tātou. That funding has come to an end. We've extended the secondment, but that is coming to an end as well, and she'll be returning back to her home team. This funding will allow Te Tātou to, under their own steam, appoint a fixed-term project manager. The intention is not for that to automatically go over to a particular council staff member. That's a process that Te Tātou will decide how they run.
Councillor McPherson?
Thank you. I support your comments, Councillor Wang, concerning this, through you, Mayor, concerning this, the function of the board. But there are a few anomalies in these proposals. First of all, it's disconcerting that a 49% increase of funding to the board is proposed at a time when we are struggling, in my view, to address the questions of affordability to ratepayers. This is going to come from ratepayers to Te Tātou.
A question, Councillor McPherson, not statements.
We're not into discussion yet?
No questions for clarification to that.
So the first question would be, would you really think it's appropriate, because the specification here is this $122,000 is going to go to a fixed-term project, a fixed-term appointment. And so the question would be, do you think this is well-timed, given the broader context of people struggling to pay their rates? That's the first question. The second one is, this fixed-term project...
I will rule that out. That is a political statement. It is for us to decide as councillors about approving this increase or not, which is the recommendation. But go,
well, I guess the question is, this funding proposal is out with the current annual planning and budgeting process being used by council to set its priorities. This proposal is not being related to the other proposals. And so I just wonder if it's appropriate, this process is appropriate. And that's the first question. The second one is the technical aspects of engaging a person to manage a fixed-term project, in my view, should involve the presentation of a business plan, job description, KPIs and so on. So it's absolutely clear.
Councillor McPherson,
do we have the clarity?
That's outside also. We are looking at a recommendation that has come to us that has been moved and seconded. That your statements are outside of that. I wonder if the Chief Executive could answer.
Point of order.
I want a response from the Chief Executive, and then I think you'll understand about framing questions related to the recommendation.
Through the chair. So your first question in my view, Councillor McPherson, is actually something for you to answer, in that staff's role here is to present this as has been tabled today, and the appropriateness of this action is something for you to determine, and I don't think staff can comment or assist you with that. The second point is that along with what was tabled today is a clear proposal with respect to what could be seen as a funding request. The process for appointment and the design of the roles and responsibilities, as an example, that are needed to undertake this will be a responsibility that Tato would actually undertake themselves.
So the question that you're putting to a council officer is inappropriate. And that's exactly why I would imagine that we had them come to present their annual plan last week. Gina, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I just, if I could bring the elected members' attention to the recommendation as it is proposed. Although I've given context as to what Te Tato's intentions are, what you are actually being asked to support is recommendation 2, that Council approve an additional annual funding contribution to Te Tato of $122,500 to support and strengthen their ability to engage effectively with Te Arawa peoples. So it would be tied to that purpose, but as an independent partnership board, it's for them to manage that appropriately in accordance with their obligations as trustees.
Thank you. Councillor Rotorua,
Point of order.
Donaldson.
Point of order,
sorry,
Chair.
did you have more?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Yes. The justification for this increase that's been presented to us takes us functionally from the board working as a policy advisory board to actually mounting projects and managing those projects, which what I've thought is functionally the role of council officials. Oh. So my question here is, do you think it's appropriate for the Te Tato board to move, in addition to its policy advisory role, which I was very complimentary about last
Chair.
night?
Yes.
Sorry.
Can we move into...
Her board is not a policy advisory board. There used to be an advisory board, and we moved that through an electoral process into a partnership board. It's not a policy advisory board. So that is out of order. Your next question.
I mean, if I just through the chair can make one comment on this, the role of Te Tato o Te Arawa is to represent the views of the iwi, and it is critical therefore that they are able to actually at times engage with iwi to determine what are the iwi's views and aspirations on various matters in order for them to actually represent those views. That's effectively at the heart, I think, of this proposal.
Yes.
Can I conclude, therefore, with my fourth question? That is, do you think this is a wise precedent to set with regard to expanding the budget of Te Tato? Thank you.
Well, that is exactly what we'll be voting on. So it's to be seen as to who supports this. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And perhaps I can assist Councillor McPherson with his question regarding the affordability of the quantum, which is what he's sort of driving at. And it's not a question, I agree with yourself and the CE, that's not a question for staff to answer, it's a question for us to answer. And I think the appropriate question to staff is this in the governance budget line of our overall budget? Our contribution to the partnership, which budget line does that come in?
So the current budget line is in the governance line, and any additional will be included within the governance budget as well.
Thank you. Councillor Puma and then Councillor Rotorua.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I go on to support this motion, I just want to know, and particularly pinging the where it says strengthen Te Tato o Te Arawa's ability to engage effectively with Te Arawa peoples. So my question lies within that, what about the non-Te Arawa people? Where does the council come in and help the other iwis as far as them wanting more funding? Because I'm sure there's just more than Te Arawa people in Rotorua.
Kia ora. There is one other iwi that has part of the district within their area of interest, their rohe, and that's Raukawa. Raukawa have never sought to be represented through Te Tatau. They have an independent relationship directly with council, and they're happy just to rely on that engagement under their own mana. In terms of citizens, members of the community who are Māori but not Te Arawa and non-Māori, I think it's important to recognise that the partnership board is very explicit that they contribute to good decision making for all of the community, Māori, non-Māori, Te Arawa, non-Te Arawa alike. So they, while they have, as each of you will have, a perspective and an experience, a life experience, and a set of values that they come along with and that they represent, fundamentally, when they contribute to decisions, they're seeking to make good decisions on behalf of the community as a whole.
Thank you. Councillor Rokawate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I do support this recommendation for the increase in funding. I believe that every paper that comes before us actually has a financial implication. Most of them have a financial implication, so we're very aware of that. I am also aware that I don't know of many Māori entities today that would ever accept an advisory role these days. That is just so passé, so history. I can't believe that it was even thought of today. So there is an opportunity for some councillors to come up to speed with the aspirations, the tino rangatiratanga aspirations of Māori these days. Because here within Te Arawa, you're talking about the Te Arawa interests, their lakes, their geothermal, their lands. So that's really what we're talking about when we talk about these entities. And so it's not about us without us, as that is what they would say these days. But I do support it, Madam Chair, and I don't have a question, so mine is really in the form of comment, just to say that Te Arawa's Vision 2050 has to align with our vision as well. We have to have that alignment, and so it's absolutely important that they engage fully and that we assist them to do that through the additional funding that's being recommended today. I was a bit surprised to see option 3 here, if I can, say so. I just thought that we've just entered into this relationship a few years ago and then just put an option up that we could either reduce or end the funding. I didn't appreciate seeing that option there. However, it was there, so we go with that. But certainly I would recommend that councillors look at our option 2 and support it as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councillor Kaifong.
Just a question, because I know we've got another issue coming up later on in the papers around additional spending. Just for my background, but given the presentation that we had yesterday, where we have unanticipated additional expenditure, does that mean we have to cut spending from somewhere else, or how do we fund additional expenditure? Just
We'll give it.
I can answer that one. The figures that you saw yesterday were this was included in that.
So they're anticipated. I have just a question, Gina, that if even with that level of funding, does Te Tatau feel that they can complete their Te Arawa plan? Because that's something that we really look forward to.
So we have worked with them around, in my view, I do think that is a very low number given, the realities of engaging people on fixed-term contracts. But they have a strong board who are very supportive and who contribute a huge amount of time and energy into supporting the project as well. So they're confident that they can deliver it this year.
This year? That's
the intention.
That's wonderful. Are there any further questions? Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Chadwick. With regard to the increase in funding, I'm going to be going to hold for the status quo, and that, just as a couple of comments, do we expect the Lakes Community Board and the Rural Community Board to likewise come up with asking for additional fundings at some stage? And I have an obligation to the ratepayer to hold our rates as close as we can to where the CPI is, and this is in no way is going to be reflected in that.
Una made a very good point, your question about the Lakes and Community Board. The remuneration levels there are not set by us. They're set externally. This is a creature of our own agreement and signed in 2015. That's why we're looking at this today. But every councillor has the right to reserve their preference, and that's why you gave us 3 with a recommendation. I'm now going to put recommendation 2, that council approve an additional annual funding contribution to Te Tato of Te Aroa of 122,500 to support and strengthen Te Tato or Te Aroa's ability to engage effectively with Te Aroa peoples. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? No, and you wish your votes recorded against. Okay, the motion is carried. And I look forward, if you could pass back, we really do look forward to receiving that plan. And welcome to those here that are standing just watching council at the doors. Wonderful that you're here with Mr. Evans to look at our art exhibition in the Galleria. This is council meeting, so we'll proceed, but we welcome you. Kia ora. Great you're coming to see the art, and we look forward to your art. I hear I've got to come and have a look at it. Thank you. We move now to recommendation 4, the business case to attend the Sister Cities New Zealand 2020 conference, which is on page 38. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Rokawa-Tate, that the report business case to attend the Sister Cities New Zealand conference be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, would you like to just overview the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think everything is covered off within this report. You will be aware that there is a elected members policy to bring before you a business case and support from the council for members to attend Sister Cities conferences. All the information is there provided in the report, so happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. No questions. I also asked that this be circulated by PDF to you all yesterday, the NZIER Economics of New Zealand Sister Cities, so you'll all have a copy of that online. Are there any questions for clarification? You're happy to move to? And seconded Councillor Wang. There appear to be no questions. Councillor McPherson. Yes,
thanks very much. A familiar theme, we must look for economies. And if we're going to look for economies, we should look at ways of participating in Sister Cities conferences here in New Zealand and overseas by participating online. There are multiple ways of participating these days. And given the situation budget-wise, I think it's urgent. We really must look for economies. Thank you. So I'm going to oppose this. Thank you.
Well, I'll speak to this because Sister Cities go back a long way post the Second World War. There is no way, having been to Sister City conferences and hosting here, you can ever have a face-to-face relationship building with the many cultures that receive the benefits of Sister City relationships. The benefits for us, while not economically profound, have delivered enormous relationships face to face with our, really with Beppu and with Wuzhong, are the two that are the most active sister cities. There is no way you could do it at a conference, there's sessions where you're sitting and you're really sharing where the opportunities are, where the richness is, where we could go. And also, if I could point out, that when those councillors who work with delegations, those delegations pay to receive a briefing, and it is that pūtea, that funding that we receive, that goes back to support participation in this. So it's cost neutral. So I totally support this. You know, with the Rugby World Cup, we'd have never have got Beppu being the host city for the All Blacks last year. Those of you that know the benefit for our children of these relationships, the number of school children, the number of international students at Toi Ohumai that receive the benefits of enduring relationships. It's a conference that I would be really sad when we're the only council in New Zealand to have a cultural ambassador, not to have our cultural ambassador at the conference. So I fully support this too, and I'd like to move it myself, that council approves the cost of flights, accommodation and registration fees for Councillor Maxwell, our cultural ambassador, to attend the Sister Cities New Zealand 2020 conference, and I ask that that amendment go into the recommendation. You second it. Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm sure Councillor Wang and I are happy to have our names struck off as mover and seconder and replaced by you and Councillor Kumar. Go for it. But look, I fully support your comments, and you know, I think to question this or label it as a junket or whatever is just penny pinching in terms of the bigger picture that you have outlined, our international relationships, and we see the benefits that you've outlined coming through. Goodness me, it's only to Ashburton. It's, you know, we're not sending Councillor Maxwell to Beppu at the ratepayers' cost, and as you pointed out, the cost is more than offset by councillors hosting delegations through here. I mean, Ashburton's not famous for junket, but in my experience, it's famous for Mrs. Osborne's pink flummery, but that's another story. So I'm in support as well.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mayor Chadwick. It's the risk of being one of these penny pinching type people that is elected to council. Our responsibility is to spend money wisely, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one of these sister city type relationships, did that not result in Matopia originally?
No, not at all. That's not a sister city at all. Quite a separate issue. Could I also point out that any government of the day, when they're taking delegations overseas now, ministers of all persuasions say, can your cultural ambassador come? That is of the high regard that he's held in, and for many of those are funded by Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, who understand the economic benefit to New Zealand of these interrelationships with other countries. We have many relationships, Councillor Bentley, not just sister cities. We have friendship cities and economic relationships with other cities as well. They cost us very little to investment in, and the yield is enormous. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Recorded against. Councillor Bentley, I didn't see your hand. Are you recorded? Thank you. You wish to be recorded against? Goodness. Now a resolution to go into public excluded. There are 3 items for consideration. To adopt the confidential minutes of the previous meeting, confidential recommendations from other committees, and the CCO board appointments. And the reasons are to enable commercial or industrial negotiations, commercial sensitivity, to protect a person's privacy, and to allow free and frank expressions of opinions. Do I have a mover and a seconder that council move into public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Maxwell, seconded Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried, and we'll have a 10-minute break for that. Well done.
That's what I just thought. What?